and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Jason Olympus Inman. Welcome to your mind university, because Geek History Lesson is the podcast that takes a character from pop culture and we dissect everything you need to know about them in less than an hour. Today, our subject is one who has a name that has been seen and heard through Greek mythology forever, and also was cohabitated by Grant Morrison for a while to make this villain who is now going to show up on Arrow Season 5. And who is that, Ashley?
Why, it is the one, the only, the stealer of fire himself, Prometheus.
Yes, Prometheus, the guy with the weirdest helmet look that you've ever seen in comic books, that they're just making him look like a dark archer with a face mask.
He reminds me of Hero from Big Hero 6.
Yes. What?
They have the same, they both have the long purple bunny ears on their helmets.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move right into this podcast. Was this podcast suggested by anybody?
It was surprisingly not suggested by anybody.
Nobody knows Prometheus, but
we know Prometheus. They will know after this podcast.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll know well into Arrow Season 5. So let's jump into the first section of our podcast, the 10-cent origin, where Ashley's going to give you all the basic tenets of the character Prometheus that you need to know in case you go to an Arrow-themed cocktail party and someone's like, who the hell is this new guy, Prometheus?
That'd be cool. I'd go to that cocktail party. So Prometheus, a.k.a. Retro, a.k.a. Shazam, is, of course, a DC Comics character created by Grant Morrison and Arnie Jorgensen, I don't know how Nordic your name is, I'm really, really sorry, who first appeared in New Year's Evil, Prometheus #1 in February of 1998. We have a very young comic book character for the podcast today. And his team affiliations have been the Society and the Injustice Gang, so if you couldn't tell by now, he's a bad guy. And his abilities include a genius-level intellect, much like everybody else. He's a skilled, armed, and unarmed combatant, very lucky there, and he has cybernetic implants that can enhance his abilities, and like Jason mentioned earlier, he is appearing as the main villain in Arrow Season 5. Dun, dun, dun! And that's your 10-cent origin on Prometheus.
Cool. Let's move on to the Meet Cute, which is a term for romantic comedies, and also the next section of our podcast, where we tell you where we first encountered the villain, Prometheus.
And how cute it was. So I first encountered Prometheus in the story that I would say most people probably know him from. When I first read Cry for Justice, I read it in, I think, 2013 when I had started working at a comic book shop. I was catching up on a lot of big events, big turning points in comics history, and I read Cry for Justice and really enjoyed the first 3 issues of that. And I don't think I'd ever heard of Prometheus before that. Prometheus really has a limited number of appearances for a DC villain.
Yep.
And where did you first meet Mr. Prometheus?
Well, back in the day. You see, I lived in an area that didn't have many comic book stores, and so I had to turn to probably the worst place to get your comic books ever, and that is the United States Postal Service.
Woo!
So I sent in my $12.97 or whatever the hell it was, and I ordered the Grant Morrison JLA run, and when issue 15 or 16, not certain which one, that he appears in, that's where I first met Prometheus. So I first encountered Prometheus the first time he ever fought the JLA. And
nice.
He was the evil Batman, and he was standing on the cover, and all the JLA people were down on the ground, and he was standing above them, and he looked all badass, although he had a weird helmet. It was a great storyline. And to be honest with you, I kind of think Prometheus has never been better than that JLA storyline.
I think I'll agree with that. I think that's a pretty salient observation that you've made there.
Cool.
Well done.
All right, so let's move on into the History 101, where Ash is going to teach you everything you need to know about Prometheus, so you are ready for Arrow Season 5, and you can be like, I know that guy.
So I actually have a caveat before we get into this lesson. There have actually been 3 Prometheuses.
Promethei?
Yes, if it's Latin and not Greek, I'm not quite sure. Promethei. There have been 3 Promethei across DC Comics history, and the first Prometheus actually appeared in the 80s, and we are not going to talk about him.
I think he was in Blue Beetle.
You are correct. Ooh, nice pull from a very recent lesson.
Yeah, right?
We are going to be talking primarily about the second Prometheus and then the third Prometheus, who's kind of known as the imposter Prometheus and who's an important part of this character's history. But we are primarily focusing on the Grant Morrison villain that we talked about in the beginning. And fun fact, there has also been a Marvel Comics character named Prometheus, so that's what you get for naming your character after a popular figure in mythology.
Cool.
Just like how Loki exists in both comic publishers as well.
And Thor.
And Thor, exactly. So comics writer Mike Conroy spoke about this version of Prometheus on a panel, and he described him...
The Grant Morrissey one.
Yes.
Okay.
As being a threat because with his technologically advanced armor and weapons arsenal, which can download the fighting techniques of the world's top martial artist, he, Prometheus, turned out to be a formidable foe as the JLA found out. And that's kind of the defining thing about Prometheus is that he can learn any fighting style, which means he can pretty much beat anyone.
Yep. Although at the time, he did that by putting CDs in his helmet.
Look, it was like the 90s and the early 2000s.
I know. I'm just saying.
I'm assuming that he's like uploaded, he's like beta testing a new hardware right now.
Hopefully his helmet is Wi-Fi.
We can only hope, really. He doesn't have to plug himself in anymore.
4G.
It was very embarrassing.
Straight up 4G.
He's not running that old 3G anymore.
Nope.
So to understand Prometheus Origin, I have to teach this to you in a linear fashion because a lot of Prometheus history is told in flashbacks.
Yep.
So I'm trying to put this together for you in the most linear, easily digestible story possible. And that begins with a character who's not actually Prometheus, but a young man who had won a competition to be a part of the JLA for a day. And Jason is nodding at me, so I'm assuming he knows who I'm going to talk about. His alias was Retro, and he wore a matching retro costume. He's blonde, he's got freckles, he wears a white bodysuit and a dumb green cape. And he's described as, quote, today's hero with yesterday's attitude.
Yep.
So I think that tells you right there the caliber of hero that we are dealing with. So the first time we ever meet Prometheus, he is telling the following story of his origin to Retro. So strap in, Prometheus's origin. Prometheus is the unnamed son of two hippie criminals who committed murder and theft throughout his childhood. With them, Prometheus traveled across the United States until they were cornered and shot dead by local law enforcement. So he's basically the child of like the cast of Hair meets Bonnie and Clyde. And that kind of messed him up a little bit. It, of course, caused Prometheus' hair to turn white from the traumatic experience of seeing his parents murdered before him, just like Rogue, because why not? And he silently vowed to, quote, annihilate the forces of justice, end quote.
Yeah, he also says, and I might be like jumping a little, he also says in another comic book that his parents were killed by justice, I believe he says in dialogue. Yes. Is how he phrases it.
Yeah, because I think he sees on either their uniform or their badge, it says like justice or...
For all.
Yeah. And he doesn't feel like he ever received justice and his parents didn't ever get justice. So he basically swears revenge on the concept of justice.
On the man. On the Superman. Take down the man.
For his dead parents. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of the Batman origin here.
Except flip.
Except the other way around.
When he was first introduced, I can remember reading interviews with Grant Morrison, and Grant Morrison said that he developed Prometheus as the evil Batman.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And kind of tells you where he's going to go. And using his parents' hidden caches of money, of course they were bank robbers. Remember when we just talked about that? Prometheus travels the world and develops his skills. Sound familiar? Becoming an underground pit fighter in Brazil, a mercenary in Africa, and joining terrorist groups in the Middle East. Now, I think that's interesting because I don't think of Brazil as being like a particularly dangerous spot the way I think of like parts of Africa or the Middle East. But that was apparently integral in his training. Again, it's a lot like Batman going all over the world, mastering a lot of different techniques, becoming a fighting machine. And after avenging his parents' death by murdering the police officers who shot them, getting his exact revenge, Prometheus goes to college because an education's always good.
It's always important, even in murder.
Yes. And he goes to college in the Himalayan city of Shambhala, inhabited by a sect of secret monks. That is a real place.
Yep.
And it's not a fake DC place.
I know. But this is the fact that he decided to go there.
He's like, of all the places. He basically goes to learn how to be a monk, to reach Zen, because if he can be Zen, then he can be a more efficient fighting machine. Again, like your Batman. Prometheus discovers a monastery that has been built on an alien spaceship. And the leaders of this sect of monks was one of the creatures from this vessel. And he kills the alien in order to obtain the ghost key, which opens a portal to the ghost zone. Now, Jason, Pop quiz. What is the ghost zone?
Well, we're going to spoil a little bit of enjoyment for our listeners because this was a twist that you didn't get to learn until about, I think near the end of Grant Morrison's run. It's limbo / purgatory / the Phantom Zone from Superman.
And it is also used as a hyperspace void for interstellar travel. That's how the alien ship winds up on Earth. And so this is where Retro comes back into the story. Remember him? We talked about him right at the start. Ugly costume, freckles. So Prometheus builds a house in the void as his headquarters, which is warped by the dimensional effects and becomes crooked. And it is revealed that this is the setting for the story and how he relates back to Retro. This is where he is telling Retro the story in his house inside this weird spaceship. So Prometheus kills Retro, of course. We all saw that coming. And courtesy of his advanced helmet, he copies the young man's mannerisms, intending to masquerade as Retro to gain access to the JLA watchtower. Because the Justice League of America is, of course, the ultimate personification of justice in the DC universe. Well, they have it in the name. It's right there in the title. So he is going to take down your Justice League. Now, initially, the plan appears to be successful, and Prometheus accomplishes the following. He infects Steel's armor with a virus that incapacitates him. He hits the Martian Manhunter with a dart containing a toxin that destabilizes his ability to control his shape, which sounds absolutely horrifying. He knocks out Huntress. He traps Zariel in the ghost zone, which is later revealed.
Zariel is the angel of the member of the Grant Morrison JLA.
Yeah, basically a superpowered angel.
Yep.
You skipped my ability to ask you that as a pop question.
Sorry.
He beats Batman senseless using his downloaded skills because he can outmatch the Dark Knight, and uses a neural shaft to disrupt Green Lantern's will, thereby stripping him of all his powers. And he informs the Flash that the tower is rigged with bombs and it will detonate if he moves too fast. So he had watched Speed the night before and was like, I'm going to take this, but do it the other way around.
There's a great scene too, I believe drawn by the great Howard Porter.
Yes.
Who, when Batman finally stops him and Prometheus goes, this disc has all the fighting skills of the top 10 fighters in the world and you're number 5. And then puts it in.
Yeah, it's really cool. And like Jason said, the CD is a little bit dated now, but it doesn't make the moment any less arresting. It was fine. It was really cool. So this is also, again, pretty thorough Batman-level planning that he's employed here. He has a plan, just like Batman, to take out every powerful member of the Justice League. However, while trying to force Superman to kill himself so that Prometheus will allow the civilians to leave.
And let's tell them really quick, because this is something that people need to understand, because people are probably like, well, how the hell could he force Superman to kill himself? At this time, Superman was Electric Superman Blue.
Yes.
And his suit was a containment suit. It was basically an energy beam.
Yes.
And Prometheus was like, tear your suit open, off. And that would essentially dissipate his energy, and he would be dead.
Yes, if he was, because he wouldn't be able to reform himself.
Well, because invulnerable blue and red underwear Superman, I don't think you could really do anything to.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's like, eat some kryptonite or something.
What do you do? Kill yourself, Superman. Do I just punch myself in the face a lot?
I mean, I can barely shave, so I don't know where to go from here. I can't overdose on drugs.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Thank you for adding.
Sorry,
that.
This is like the Prometheus comes from a period of comics where like my comics love and like was at its height. I think like I wanted every piece of it, and like I have basically memorized it.
I'm more than happy to have you add and interject at any point.
Prometheus is also one of those villains that I cannot believe they've never made an action figure of
yet.
Yeah,
you know you're gonna get one from Arrow.
Well, you're gonna get the Arrow look, but I want crazy helmet guy.
DC Collectibles, I'm looking at you. Make crazy bunny-eared purple helmet guy for Jason.
There you go.
Okay, thanks, bye. So yeah, he's like, Superman, kill yourself and I'll let all these civilians leave. And Superman's like, maybe. He's thinking about it. And then Prometheus is, of course, caught off guard by the anti-heroine Catwoman, and Catwoman saves the day, which is kind of cool. And this allows the heroes time to recover and regroup from what he had done to them, and force Prometheus to retreat when Steel infects his systems, turning the the virus back on Prometheus, with the virus using a temporary link that was created when the villain downloaded the original virus. So we're already using the internet for warfare in the super world in 1998.
And if you remember, Catwoman was on the JLA tower disguised as Cat Grant, which we revealed in our previous Geek History lesson on Cat Grant. Batman put her there as a plant because all the reporters of the world were there to look at the new JLA team.
Yeah, and it's a really cool moment for Catwoman because Catwoman is, of course, like an anti-hero, kind of a villainess, and in this moment where she has the chance to save the world, she takes it.
Yep.
And that's really cool, and then that lends credence, if you like her, with Batman.
In Hush.
Yes. So now we're going to go to September 2003 to May of 2004 during this amazing event called JLA/Avengers. Because Prometheus appears there very briefly during an encounter between the JLA and an alternate universe superhero team called the Avengers.
Who are those guys?
Well, they're like this Iron Dude and this Captain What's-His-Name and this big green guy that you may recognize from movies. And he briefly skirmishes with Captain America while he's using Batman's skills. He's employed Batman's particular arsenal, but Captain America easily defeats him because he's a bad guy and it can't be that easy.
Yeah.
So as a comic book fan, this is a really fun storyline, even though it really has like nothing to do in forwarding either universe and has no effect on Prometheus as a character. But if you ever wanted to see Marvel characters fight DC characters, it's a really fun run. And Prometheus does get his butt handed to him by Captain America, which is satisfying on a very visceral level.
Yeah.
Prometheus then returns as a member of Lex Luthor's second Injustice gang. And during the confusion...
Injustice League.
Oh, in Justice League?
I believe Grant, I could be wrong. I mean, I know you do research, but I remember for a fact that Grant Morrison always called it the Injustice League because of the Injustice League because of the Justice League, not the Injustice Gang.
Well, my research said Injustice Gang.
Okay.
But agree to disagree. It doesn't matter. They were bad guys. Lex Luthor's team of baddies. During the confusion caused by the arrival of the weapon Megadon, Prometheus is able to utilize the white Martian space vessel abandoned in the Ghost Zone to infiltrate the Justice League Watchtower. Again, that's kind of his whole deal, is like break into the Watchtower and take everything down. And he attacks the team aide Oracle, and Oracle is, of course, Barbara Gordon post-killing joke.
What was the name of the villain again? You said
they're fighting a weapon called Megadon.
I believe it's Mageddon.
Mageddon, really?
Because of Armageddon.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry.
Because of Armageddon.
I was like, Megadon. I don't know.
I'm sorry. And students and Professor Ashley, I know I am a lowly TA in this lesson, but again, this is my bread and butter.
No, please. I will take pronunciation notes on everything.
So take back. So you were telling me about Barbara Gordon,
right? So he all of the Injustice Gang or Injustice League is causing this big kerfuffle because they're trying to fight. They're trying to get their hands on Mageddon, and the Justice League is also there trying to protect Mageddon from all these bad dudes led by Lex Luthor. So Prometheus steals this white Martian space vessel that he found floating around the Ghost Zone, which was still the Ghost Zone at the time, and he uses it to rake back into the Watchtower because it's his whole deal: take down the Justice League from the Watchtower, and the only person who's there is Oracle. So he kind of like beats her up because he's a bad guy. So he's like, why not beat up a girl in a wheelchair? That's what bad guys do. And this all takes place during a one-shot called Faces of Evil, Prometheus #1 from March of 2009. Oracle escapes from Prometheus with his helmet damaged in the process. And the villain retrieves his original helmet, which was lost during his first battle with the JLA and had been in their trophy room, and he does battle against Batman once again, who Barbara has called to her side. Prometheus is neutralized when Batman sabotages his helmet again, based on the month he had spent studying it after their last battle. So he's kind of like Magneto and he's kind of like Juggernaut. He really needs the helmet in order to have access to the most interesting part of his skills and everything. That kind of makes him a decent villain. And Batman had loaded it with the physical skills and coordination of Professor Stephen Hawking, who, due to, of course, motor neuron disease, MLS, can barely move. And this incapacitates him, and Batman prevents his fellow member Huntress from killing Prometheus before firing her from the JLA. So he's like lying on the floor, and Huntress is like, kill him. And Batman's like, no, you're fired.
Yep.
Because you would be just as bad as Prometheus if you did this to him.
It's interesting because I've always remembered that moment where Batman does that to Prometheus, and it's kind of like a cheeky joke, and it actually reminds me, I think that line is a Mark Millar line. Because if you don't know, fair comic book fans, Mark Millar, of course, the writer of Kick-Ass and Chrononaut and The Kingsman, he and Grant Morrison used to be really, really, really good friends.
Good bros.
And they used to co-write everything. And they used to like read each other's scripts and give each other's notes and stuff like that. Mark Millar's big break in DC Comics is basically because of Grant Morrison. They wrote this really great run of The Flash where they introduced the Black Flash that you just saw on television last. That's their idea. That line where he's like, I'm giving you Stephen Hawking is so much more like Mark Millar's line of like style of writing.
I would also say that Mark Millar's writing has sometimes has an edge of meanness to it.
Yes.
That Grant Morrison doesn't have, which would also like, this is mean.
Well, Mark Millar also, if you read a lot of his dialogue, is also about a lot of his dialogue things are jokes.
Yes.
Every piece of his dialogue. And that reads like a joke to me. Again, I have no confirmation of this, but I've always thought that Mark Millar gave that line to Grant Morrison.
Cool.
Like, it just reads like a Mark Millar line. And at this point, they were still friends. So I have a feeling that that's a Mark Millar line in Justice League.
I think that's a very interesting piece of trivia. So following that, Batman and Martian Manhunter took Prometheus into custody and arranged to reduce Prometheus' brain to a mentally disabled state in order to permanently end his threat, reasoning that his skills and training meant that no jail could hold him under conventional circumstances. This, again, is a really extreme measure even for Batman, for anyone in the Justice League to take, and I think really speaks to how powerful and how terrible a threat Prometheus actually is for how limited time he actually has on the page. I mean, if you're like, yeah, you'd be better off mentally incapacitated, you're probably a crazy person. Upon Martian Manhunter's death at the hands of Libra, Prometheus' mind was restored and he began tracking down his would-be protege.
We jumped ahead like 8 years.
Well, like I said, I'm trying my best to tell the story as linearly as possible.
Yep.
So
yeah, because we've now left the 90s and we're now in the late 2000s because we're talking about Final Crisis right now.
Yeah, don't worry though, we're gonna skip back.
Okay.
This is all just to say that they put him in jail and he eventually gets out because Martian Manhunter dies. It's very sad. This resulted in him killing the pretender Prometheus, who we're going to go back to and talk about a little while, and maiming and murdering members of the Blood Pack superhero team made up of Jade, Ballistic, Nightblade, Luria, Geist, Mongrel, Sparks, and Razor Sharp. And it's totally okay if you don't know who a bunch of those characters are. Jade is a pretty cool Green Lantern. But so basically,
Alan Scott's daughter.
Yes. So basically, Batman and Martian Manhunter put him in jail. He broke out of jail and murdered a bunch of people.
Yep.
But the way that you can keep murder from spreading to the Mind University is if you head on over to patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. Go check it out, and you can help support everything that we do by heading over there. You can get such amazing results as Geek History Lesson a day early. So if you're listening to this a day early, hello and thank you for your donation. And you can use this knowledge on your friends. You can lock them up in jail. And then you can also get access to our Patreon exclusive podcast, Geek History Lesson Extra, where today we are going to pit Prometheus against some other popular comic book villains.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
I think we know which way that's going to go.
I don't know. I think I might surprise you. I pulled some good ones.
Cool. All right.
So that is patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. Thank you to everybody who is already a patron over there. We love you. You mean the world to us. And you're what allows us to talk about kooky characters like Prometheus, which is pretty cool.
That's right.
Now back to the lesson. So remember how I talked about how Prometheus went into that mentally disabled state, right? And he was like really sad and in jail.
Yeah, it was Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, so during that time, an imposter took up his mantle because there must be a Prometheus in the world, question mark?
Well, I was going to say the thing that, like, and we might talk about this later, that like Prometheus is one of those villains that I thought was so cool and had such a great debut, and then nobody did anything with him.
You're exactly right. He does have another story coming up where he's fairly important.
Okay.
Cry for Justice.
Yep.
But his JLA appearance, I would say, is the height of his excellence in storytelling.
His original appearance.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer. You would hope that after, almost 20 some years that you get another great Prometheus story.
Now, you said that another Prometheus took up the mantle. I'm going to guess they stole his helmet.
Well, why don't I tell you? Because this is a character who actually knew Prometheus when he was Prometheus, and he had his own helmet. He was a man named Chad Graham, and he'd been taken in by Prometheus to serve as his evil sidekick years earlier. But Graham proved too impulsive and ended up, under unknown circumstances, leaving Prometheus, only to return years later to assume the identity once the original went missing following his second battle with the Justice League that we just talked about. He's kind of like Jason Todd.
Okay.
He's a very impulsive sidekick who's not really great at what he's supposed to do and then comes back later to try to steal his mentor's mantle.
Sure.
So in Batman Gotham Knights number 50 from April of 2004,
such a good series, Gotham Knights.
Oh my God, go read it. It's so good. This version of Prometheus, we're going to call him Graham for the most part, appears in Star City.
Prometheus.
Prometheus appears in Star City, battling the hero Green Arrow and local law enforcement. He's almost killed by Green Arrow, but is eventually saved by Hush because he apparently had nothing better to do at the time. Hush then forms an alliance with the imposter, but abandons him due to apparent incompetence. He's like, you're a crappy supervillain. You got kidnapped. I don't want anything else to do with you.
And that's something coming from Tommy Elliott Hush, who is also a crappy supervillain.
You think so?
Yes.
He's got those cool bandages, though.
That's all he got.
He's got like one good story. If you would like to request a lesson on Hush.
It'll be a very short lesson.
Oh my God, it'll be like 10 minutes long. Read Hush, the end. Then another Batman favorite villain appears in Graham's life, one Miss Talia Al Ghul.
Oh.
I almost said father of Damian Wayne, but that's totally wrong.
Mother of Damian Wayne. Possibly father.
We don't know. She's magic, maybe.
Don't judge.
Talia leads the evil Cobra cult in search of the true Prometheus in a bid to secure his ghost key. She wants access to the Ghost Zone, Phantom Zone. Graham, poisoned by one of the creations of villainous Poison Ivy, is saved once again by Hush.
What?
So basically,
Tommy Elliott, stop.
Tommy Elliott's like, look, you're like useless, but I guess you're cute, so I'll save you.
Sure, sounds good.
Every time he gets in trouble in a Batman-centric story, Hush is going to show up and save him. It's really ridiculous. Graham is then recruited to join another version of the Secret Society of Supervillains. I say another because there's like been probably 100 versions of the team, just like the Justice League, if you were going to line them all up.
In Justice Gangs, there's been a whole bunch of them too.
Ridiculous, yeah. And Prometheus participates in a massive attack by the Society on the city of Metropolis, and he gets beat up by Superman. And during this battle, he kills a minor hero named Peacemaker. Aw, very sad. That's kind of the most important part of his villain legacy.
And this is still Prometheus.
This is Prometheus,
okay,
yeah.
Got it. This is Graham.
And this is Graham. Graham also has an encounter with the superheroine group Birds of Prey and defeats the mercenary Lady Shiva in seconds. Now, I personally take some umbrage with this because if he's like such a crappy supervillain that Hush doesn't even want him around, I don't really understand how he's supposed to be able to beat Lady Shiva. He does have the same helmet and he can download the same powers, but I really like Lady Shiva, so I think that's kind of a bummer.
I like Lady Shiva as well, but I guarantee you Lady Shiva is number one on that disc. The moves. She's number one, easily.
Ooh.
She is easily the best fighter in the world. And Batman's number 5, and the original Prometheus is probably somewhere on that list too.
You think he's around like 7 or 8?
He's probably like 9.
That's interesting.
And so, like, combine all of them together, and yeah, he can beat Lady Shiva.
Bummer.
But it's all autopilot because that's what that helmet is.
It is. It's like Chuck. It's a total lack of actual understanding. Prometheus eventually falls under the control of the alien Starro. Bet you didn't see that one coming.
Nope, didn't care to.
And is used as a foot soldier by Starro, but is defeated by an alternate future version of Robin and freed once Starro is defeated.
What alternate future version of Robin? What?
Yeah, don't worry too much about it. This takes place, though, for my Teen Titans fans in Teen Titans Volume 3, number 51 to 54, from November of 2007 to February of 2008. It's basically just Robin, who's like taller, sexier, and has a different costume.
Okay.
Who never came to be. I'm sure there were plans like, oh, we'll do this. Instead of making him, Tim won't be Nightwing, but... It's weird. He's in a cool costume though.
Well, you like Robin, and you didn't really want to talk about it, so I wanted to know the reason.
the reason why he's an alternate future Robin?
No, the reason why you didn't want to talk about this Robin. He must be very unimpressive.
It's dumb. Okay. That's why. Prometheus is later murdered when the real Prometheus regains his mind and kills him, expressing contempt for Prometheus's impersonation, but still satisfied with the damage that Prometheus had done. And that he had bolstered his reputation, and that would lead the heroes to underestimating the real Prometheus in the future.
Got it.
And Prometheus is one of the only comic book characters to be murderized, and he's never come back to life. So if anybody out there is looking for their in and their unique story at DC Comics,
not at all.
I'm calling it right now. You got to bring Prometheus back to life.
And you got to call him that, Prometheus.
But Jason and I expect created by credits.
Story credits.
There you go. Then a little thing called Cry for Justice happened. So there's a bunch of superhero deaths, including Freedom Beast, Gloss, the Tasmanian Devil, and attacks on other characters, Barry Allen, Batwoman, the Crimson Avenger, and it is eventually revealed that these are the work of the true Prometheus, the guy that we started this lesson about. So Hal Jordan gets pretty worked up about this. He teams up with his good buddy Oliver Queen, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, hard-traveling heroes together, and they demand that they are going to do their team's name justice, and they will demand justice for the world. It's called Cry for Justice because in the first issue, you see a bunch of different heroes literally screaming up to the sky for justice. It was probably a really cool idea. The art is really beautiful, but that's kind of
great.
Yeah, that's kind of where the idea falls flat. This is also the story that introduces, more than his original battle with Prometheus, why Prometheus and Oliver Queen, Green Arrow kind of hate each other. Ray Palmer and Ryan Choi team up, and they get the name Prometheus from a really low-tier villain, and that starts the heroes on a quest looking for him. Hal and Ollie go to Gotham City and meet up with Jason Bard, who is Batman's private detective, who helps them hunt down the villains on their quest for justice. Now, Prometheus, meanwhile, has invited a collection of villains to Gotham City in order to await instructions for him. When he's captured by this cavalcade of heroes, they ask him why he's doing this, because they're like, you're like a B-grade villain, like you hired a bunch of B and C-grade villains, why are you doing this? And Prometheus says that he wants to be the new Batman because Batman had recently died. And he says that the thing about Batman is that everyone's afraid of Batman. Mm-hmm. Even Green Arrow, even Green Lantern, they're all afraid of Batman. And Prometheus thinks that if he can get all of these villains to be afraid of him, then he can basically be the Batman of the villain world, which would make him... It's a good idea,
and it goes back to what this character was originally created to be, the opposite, the anti-Batman.
Exactly, the bad guy Batman. So the heroes are eventually joined by Captain Marvel, except it's not Billy Batson, it's Freddie Freeman. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So this was. I'll give you a little bit of history on this.
Cool.
Okay. So after Infinite Crisis, that was the one before Final Crisis. That's the one where Superboy Prime is punching the wall. It's sort of supposed to be the direct sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yes.
The multiverse comes back. Mm-hmm. Magic was broken.
Yeah.
So Billy Batson takes the mantle of the Wizard Shazam, mm-hmm. and he decides to make a new champion for himself. Mm-hmm. And Captain Marvel Jr. has to go through all these trials in this amazing miniseries called The Trials of Shazam, written by Judd Winnick and drawn by Howard Porter.
We love Howard Porter today.
We do. Howard Porter's great. But Trials of Shazam, if you've never read it, is great. It is Freddie Freeman. And if you don't know, Freddie Freeman also, he has two canes, so he's sort of disabled.
Yeah, he's physically disabled.
And he has to go through all these trials to become the new Shazam. Mm-hmm. He does. And so he becomes Shazam, because that's the point in DC history where they really started to be like, we're not going to call him Captain Marvel anymore. We're just going to call him Shazam.
Well, Green Lantern sure calls him Captain Marvel the first time he flies down from the sky. He probably does. And then he gets corrected.
Yes, but this is the Freddie Freeman Shazam, who only got like 3 years in continuity before they wiped it all out.
Yeah, but it is really important that you know that that's Freddie Freeman and not Billy Batson, okay?
Yeah, because he has long hair.
So he's got Elvis hair. Remember that. So all these heroes come together. They've all discovered that Prometheus has been stealing all of the most powerful technology in the world, including a piece of the cosmic treadmill. And it is later revealed toward the end of that story arc that Prometheus is impersonating Freddie Freeman in order to gain access to the JLA satellite. Remember that? Doesn't that sound familiar? Which in turn allows Prometheus to place teleportation devices in the home cities of various heroes, which will strand the cities in various places in the past and the future as revenge for the years that he spent while his mind was damaged. He was a prisoner of his own mind. He couldn't understand the passage of time and place. He couldn't further his career. So he's doing that to the homes of all the characters who star in Cry for Justice. Prometheus also maims Roy Harper. No.
Chops his arm, right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
This is Roy Harper losing his arm.
Yeah, this is the terrible Arsenal storyline.
Yeah, don't worry about it too much, because Roy is the first person to realize that Freddie isn't the Freddie that we think he is after all.
And this is where he was Red Arrow as well.
He was Red Arrow, yes, and he suffers mightily for it. Mm-hmm. While defeating the JLA and their allies, the Teen Titans, with the reformed supervillain Shade using files on them, he decides not to kill any of them.
Prometheus?
Yes.
Okay.
Prometheus is then captured by Donna Troy and brutally beaten until she is stopped by the Shade. So he almost dies, but then he doesn't, which is kind of, this happens to him a lot.
And the Shade is the smoky, shadowy character from Starman, who was a villain of Jay Garrick and such, and
then was not?
Well, he sort of becomes like a neutral party.
I think that's a good way. In the same way that Spectre is supposed to be a neutral party.
Well, Spectre is he's basically vengeance. A superhero, basically.
Yeah. So Prometheus then offers to reveal the location of the devices that he's stolen and planted in all these different cities in exchange for his release. Only after his devices begin to malfunction and start destroying the city. So it's basically a countdown to see which cities they're going to be able to save in time. With Star City suffering massive casualties, including the death of Roy Harper's daughter, Leanne, Prometheus's ultimatum is met and he returns to his lair where he is murdered by Green Arrow, who shoots an arrow through the villain's head.
Yep.
And I would hazard that if any story beats are going to happen in Arrow, this might be the one.
Well, this is going to be the one that's interesting because that's the end of the storyline. It kind of comes out of nowhere, too.
It does. I won't agree that it's totally earned, but it is interesting to see that like Ollie will actually go that far.
Well, Ollie has murdered before.
Yes.
In the 80s in the Mike Grell run. Mm-hmm. So it's not a new idea for Green Arrow.
No, but I feel like it was the reintroduction of it. Yeah. There had been some time.
Yes. It had been like 20 years. Mm-hmm. I agree with you that if we are going to see any correlation between the TV show and Cry for Justice, this is probably going to be it. Because if we remember in season 4, Oliver killed Damien Dark on a public street. I actually think what they're going to do is they're going to twist it, because I have a strong prediction that the end of season 5 is that Star City will know that Oliver Queen is Green Arrow for definite.
You think so?
And I think we'll see Mayor Oliver Queen kill Prometheus.
You think with Van Dyke Beard, Oliver Queen?
No, not Van Dyke Beard, but I think we'll see Mayor Oliver Queen rack an arrow into this guy's brain.
I mean, I think it would be really interesting if they ripped off Roy's arm, but I think that's a little too far afield for Arrow.
Well, we have not seen any of the episodes of season 5 of Arrow at the time of this recording. But Roy is coming back. He's in a couple of the beginning episodes.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe we'll see Leanne. That would be super cool.
I don't think we'll see Leanne.
I don't think so, but it'd be cool.
You know, it would not surprise me if they do the arm thing. Because Curtis Holt, a guy who can build robotic arms, is a character of the show. Mr. Terrific himself is a character in the show. There is nothing to stop one of these characters losing an arm and getting a robotic arm.
That's fascinating. Yep. I hadn't thought about that as an actual possibility that could happen.
I bet you they do it.
Dude, that'd be so cool.
Yep.
Tap into some of that Winter Soldier zeitgeist. Oh, yeah. And then the next big move for Prometheus is the New 52.
The New 52.
Jason, real quick, as Prometheus, what's the New 52?
DC said, we need new number ones. And so they made new number ones, and they rebooted their entire universe, and they found out that Superman and Batman had been around for about 5 years, and that's it. Nothing that happened previously happened. It's all new stuff in the New 52.
I liked your voice choice there. It was very strong.
Kind of like down here.
Yeah.
Well, he's sort of like from the docks, but he's not. he's a little.
But he still pronounces all of his consonants, and that's what's really important.
It is totally is. Yes.
So Prometheus shows up to torment Midnighter in the New 52.
All right. Who's Midnighter?
Midnighter is like gay Batman?
Sorta, yeah.
angry gay Batman?
Well, if you don't know, Midnighter is actually a Wildstorm character.
I didn't know that, actually.
He was a member of the Authority.
Well, I've never read The Authority.
The Authority is a spinoff of Stormwatch, and now in the New 52, Wildstorm is in the DC universe.
Yes.
But Midnighter is like gay Batman, and he's the ultimate planner, and he can like see your moves and stuff like that. He's also dating Apollo, who is the gay Superman of the Authority.
I didn't know that.
They're boyfriend and boyfriend.
I got to read The Authority now.
You do. It's a great book.
You just sold me on reading The Authority.
It's a great book. If no one out there has read The Authority, you need to read the first 24 issues of the first volume. It's the first 12 issues are Warren Ellis with Brian Hitch as artist, and the second 12 issues are Mark Miller with Frank Quitely.
Ooh,
Yep.
That legendary team.
It's one of the greatest comic book runs of all time.
Cool. Nice sidebar.
Yep.
So Prometheus is like, I don't like Midnighter. So he decides to torment him using stolen technology from the God Garden that he sells to various individuals around the world. In addition, he's got a hold of the Gardener's secret files on Midnighter's true identity and origin, which makes him a very viable threat to outing, and I don't mean that as a pun or anything, who Midnighter really is. When he's confronted by Midnighter, Prometheus uses the God Garden technology to block Midnighter's tactical computer, eliminating the edge Midnighter has in analyzing an opponent's fighting techniques. Because a lot like Batman, Midnighter can kind of break down your techniques.
That's Midnighter's power.
Yes.
Is that he can look at you and he can figure out your rhythm and beat you.
Yeah, you know, like that scene in Civil War where the computer does it for Iron Man?
Yep.
It's like that, except in his brain.
Except in his brain, yep.
Prometheus this is Paramecium. Prometheus also reveals that he has downloaded all of Midnighter's own skills into his brain to use against him, because now he can download stuff straight into his own brain. There's no more CDs or like flash drives.
It's all Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no more.
Where do you think we talked about this list in his head. Okay, so he's number 9 on his own list.
Yeah.
Batman is 5. Lady Shiva is 1. Where's Midnighter in that 10?
7.
You think?
I think he's below Batman, but above Prometheus.
I think
the deductive powers there, regardless of what his own skill set is a really powerful.
I agree with you. I think Midnighter probably is 7. Do you know who I think is 8?
No. Nightwing?
Dick Grayson. Yep, Nightwing.
The other Batman? Yep. The other
And
Batman?
the only reason I put Dick Grayson that low is because in the more recent comic book, especially towards the end of the New 52 and the beginning of DC Rebirth, Midnighter and Grayson sort of they call themselves frenemies.
Yeah, they're like, they have like a angry bromance.
Yeah. But then they become allies and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's very interesting since Midnighter is a Batman type analog. But Midnighter like whoops Grayson pretty good.
Yeah, he does. I actually really like their relationship as like bros. Yep. I think it's really cool. It's kind of what you could do if you wanted to with Jason Todd and Dick Grayson, because Midnighter will go places that your Bat family generally won't.
Midnighter will kill.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know. There's a fun dynamic.
Cool.
And Prometheus has yet to appear in the current DC Rebirth continuity, but there's all kinds of room for that to happen.
Yep.
And fun fact, Prometheus does appear in the Smallville Season 11 comic book that Jason loves oh so very much.
Yep.
So you can go and search for him there. And we're going to talk about him in other media really quick. He's pretty much restricted to appearing in DC-centric video games, including appearing in the Nintendo DS version of Justice League Heroes.
Cool.
Making a cameo appearance in Batman Arkham Asylum. His wanted poster is featured on the penitentiary's guard room and can be scanned as an answer to one of Riddler's questions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
I didn't think he had appeared in any video games. That's cool.
And Prometheus is referred to in Batman Arkham City. Throughout Arkham City, there are newspapers detailing how 2 criminals were shot in an alley and how a boy watches his parents die. Also, there is a psych report detailing the approval of his release from Arkham Island on the wall of the GCPD Forensics Lab.
That's cool.
So there you go. He is canon in the Batman Arkham universe.
He would make an amazing Arkham video game. Him as the main villain.
Yeah, as like the big boss.
Yeah, are you ready? I call it Batman Arkham Gods.
Ooh, that's cool.
And he's the main villain.
I love that.
Yep.
Very nice. And like we mentioned at the top of the episode, he will be the main antagonist for the CW's Arrow throughout its 5th season. And that is your history of Prometheus the villain.
All right. Yeah, you did a pretty good job there.
You approve of it?
Sure.
Cool. Thanks for not beating me up. That was really nice.
It'll come after we stop recording.
Oh, is that the extra?
Yeah.
Damn.
The voice changed a little bit. I evolved it.
It was okay. I'm there. We got to build the character.
Just like Prometheus. Okay, well, let's move into recommended reading. This is where Ashley is going to recommend the books that you should read. If you want to read more about Prometheus, I have a feeling it's going to be a very small list. But if you want to check out this very small list, go over to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading, guys. We have Amazon widgets there on our website. You can click on them. It'll take you to where you can buy the book. And if you buy the book, a small percentage of your purchase will come back to helping support the Mine University with server costs, electricity costs, and an electrified fence to keep people like Prometheus away.
We can finally buy those CDs of our very own.
Oh, man, I'm going to become the 8th best fighter in the world.
Dope. So if you want to read more about Prometheus, I have 3 recommendations for you. So my first recommendation is JLA, the Deluxe Edition, Volume 2. This volume collects JLA 10 through 17, Prometheus Villain number 1, which is his origin and introduction, JLA Wildcats number 1, and JLA Secret Files number 2.
Yep, and it's a pretty spiffy softcover.
It is very nice. So if you want to, I would definitely recommend checking out Volume 1 because this is a great JLA run. But if you want to go straight to the Prometheus, you got to go to the Deluxe Edition, Volume 2.
And I have said many times on this podcast that I consider that to be the greatest run of Justice League ever written. Mm-hmm. So... if you want to pick up Volume 1 as well, then believe me, you're going to enjoy it. I give Volume 1 of JLA to a lot of people that have never read Justice League before. I have never had one person tell me that they thought it sucked.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, everybody was like, wow, give me the next one. And then you get Prometheus.
Definitely. And if you want the second most important Prometheus story, you have to pick up Justice League Cry for Justice. It's a single volume. It kind of falls apart toward the end, but it is such a beautiful story, and it like just to look at, and it starts out on such a great idea. If you like Prometheus, if you like what he's all about, definitely worth checking out.
It's also the introduction of Green Arrow versus Prometheus. And I bet you they're going to take a lot of stuff from that storyline for Arrow Season 5.
Yeah, so if you are an arrowhead, arrow
that's what
person?
you call them, arrowhead.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
I was like a redhead, so an arrowhead.
No, an arrowhead.
Yeah, so if you're an arrowhead, you have to pick up Cry for Justice. Ollie has the Van Dyke beard and is real sexy in it. And then it's like the hottest like Van Dyke beard Green Arrow has ever been.
Okay, cool.
So speaking as the straight girl on the podcast. And for my third choice, I want to recommend Midnighter Volume 1. We really got down a little Midnighter rabbit hole. He appears right at the end of this. And if you like his appearance in this, there is a second volume that follows it up. And then you'll have read all of Midnighter in the New 52.
Hey, it all works. It's all good. So head on over there, pick up those books, and get you some Prometheus goodness.
Get some purple helmet in your life.
Let's head on into the discussion.
Yes.
Where we're going to talk about some topics that relate to Prometheus.
Now, I just have a short discussion today.
Okay, then I have a short answer.
I have one. I hope you don't. I have one important question for you. So, Prometheus is kind of a standalone villain. He doesn't work on a lot of teams. He doesn't team up with a lot of other villains, kind of likes to do his own thing. If you were going to pair him up with someone or put him on a team, who would you most like to see him play against?
Deathstroke.
Deathstroke, you'd like to see them partner up?
Yeah. They're very similar because Deathstroke is a very Batman-type villain. Mm-hmm. Although Deathstroke will get tired of his stuff. I almost...
his shiznat?
I almost turned this into an explicit podcast. He would get tired of him. And I also think Prometheus... I think no matter who you team Prometheus up with, he's going to betray him.
Oh, interesting.
I think Prometheus is going to betray that person. Because I think Prometheus is going to stick around long enough to copy their moves, put the CD in his head, and then kill them.
And then move along.
But I think Deathstroke would be very interesting because I think Prometheus has no morals, has no code. Mm-hmm. Slade Wilson does.
He has a code of honor.
There's a certain line he won't cross, and that's where they're going to butt heads.
Also, another Green Arrow villain, which I think is very interesting, Paul.
I just went for like similar temperaments. Mm-hmm. I think they would.
Do you think Midnighter, do you think Prometheus would be capable of leading a larger team?
Only as his lackeys.
Okay. Only like B and C level?
Yeah, he would gather a team as a distraction. But he would never lead that team in any reality. That team would always be considered pawns to him.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like cannon fodder to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's harsh.
That's what Prometheus. I think Prometheus is a great villain, and again, like if I ever get a chance to write some DC universe or whatever, like Prometheus is going to be one of the first villains I work in.
Cool.
Because I think I like the legacy. One of the best things, this is going to turn us into a Marvel discussion in the middle of DC.
That's fine.
One of the best things that I feel that Brian Michael Bendis has ever done for the Marvel universe is that he has brought back these characters that other writers just dropped in the Marvel universe and never did anything, including the Hood, Maria Hill, Gravity, a whole bunch of the Sentry, and he's made them relevant. I think Prometheus is one of those characters, and I think Prometheus deserves a place. I think Zoriel deserves a place. The angel from JLA.
Oh, yeah? You have a soft spot for Zoriel?
Well, like, I think if you ever see heaven in the DC universe or any kind of heavenly thing, we should see Zoriel.
Nice.
You know, like, these characters exist in the DC universe. And when somebody like Grant Morrison introduces them into that universe, they're very rich. And I think the more you hearken back to this long history, not only do you make this place feel like a real world because of that, because it has an ongoing history, but also you hearken back to sell more comics.
Nice. Reprintability, branding. All right, well, that's it for the discussion. Why don't we roll into the last part of our podcast?
Cool, let's move into the teaching tweet where Professor Ashley is going to describe Prometheus to you in 140 characters or less.
Prometheus, : he's got a cool name, and he's got a cool helmet. Yup.
I call mulligan on that teaching tweet.
No.
Because Prometheus has so much potential.
Hashtag Prometheus has so much potential.
There you go. Yep. Cool. Well, thank you for this lesson on Prometheus. Are you excited for him to show up in Arrow Season 5?
I am. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with him. I hope there's CDs and helmets.
No, it just looks like a big hood.
Aw,
So, all right. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Geek History Lesson. We will see you next week, but don't forget to go to iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, where you can subscribe to this podcast every single week. We got a new episode coming straight at you. And Ashley, if they want to suggest characters like Midnighter or maybe Zoriel for future lessons, where can they do that?
Well, you can do that at geekhistorylesson.com or facebook.com/geekhistorylesson. There's a bunch of different ways to contact us in both of those places.
Yes, and you can come complain to us about the Fandom Zone on Twitter. For me, at Jawiin, Jawiin, and for Ashley, at Ashley V. Robinson. Please tell us everything that we supposedly did wrong. And
no, don't.
Yeah, or do. Whatever you want to do. We're going to be living in the Phantom Zone for a while. It'll all be good. For this lesson of Geek History Lesson, I am Jason Prometheus Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson.
Please take us out, Professor Ashley.
Class is now dismissed.